Dawn Pinnock, welcome to Uncommon Philanthropist.
Thank you so much, Rena. I'm very happy to be here.
I know you are a very, very busy woman with a super high profile job. And I thank you so much for being here today to share your story, to share your organization's story, and to help us, the uncommon philanthropist of the world, really just be more enlightened about our homeless brothers and sisters and how we can better serve them. So thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
So you are with the Center for Urban Community Services, also known as CUCS, or do you say that some way?
So you're absolutely right. It's a bit of a mouthful, but in our field, in terms of supportive housing and integrated care for either individuals who are homeless or formerly homeless, we are known as CUCS, but the full name is the Center for Urban Community Services.
Before we get into that amazing organization, I would love to learn a little bit about your story, Dawn. Are you from New York, or just tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes, I am a native New Yorker. I am also a proud product of the public school system. So when I talk to people about my history here in New York City and in terms of my commitment to service, specifically here in New York City, I just feel like it's a way for me to give back to the city that helped to raise me. So about 30 years ago, I had started off in the nonprofit sector for a short stint, did some international work, but then transitioned back into government, where I worked for about 28 years before landing back in the nonprofit world at CUCS.
Well, I think to work in nonprofit, it is a bit of a calling. So what kind of was resonating within your heart to want to serve in that way?
So I think that you're right. It is a calling. I believe that service really chose me. I am the daughter of two individuals who worked in government. And so I think I had a chance to see service in action each and every day of my life. My father, in particular, who is my hero, he was someone who always said that there's really no greater honor than to serve. And so even in my youth, I remember my sisters and I, before sitting down for Thanksgiving dinner, we would pack up meals, ride the train, finding individuals in need, serving them a meal before we ate ourselves, but just always being mindful that there is something you can do wherever you are to make either that individual's life better or that system better. So it was just really a natural transition for me working in government and then coming back into the nonprofit world because from my perspective, it's all service.
So, quite amazing that you had that growing up, that model of philanthropy in your home. I'm a little jealous that you had that, and it really transitions from generation to generation when you do that, when you have that element of service, and you're talking about that within the home. So, I think that's just really great job to your parents for instilling that in you. And I believe you have kids. So, did they catch the servant leader bug?
So I have some bonus daughters, but I also have my daughter who I'm raising here with my husband, and she is 16. So oddly enough, we were talking about her community service hours and as she thinks about colleges and really what mark she wants to make in the world. And really what came up was that, there's this really clear connection between how I was raised and also the seeds that I'm planting within her as a young person who is navigating New York City, one of the most complex cities, in the world. And it was really a wonderful conversation to really impart to her just some of the ways in which you can easily take for granted certain things that we're just able to do as we're getting up each morning, putting our foot in front of the other. But we also have direct exposure to other New Yorkers who may be having a more tough time with doing some of the things that we easily take for granted. So, in talking to her about commitment to service and what that looks like for her as a 16-year-old was really heartening that she's already thinking about that and thinking about how she wants to have a life driven by purpose and service.
That makes me so, so happy. Well, I am so excited to learn more about CUCS. So, if you want to just kind of take us through, I know there's very much a holistic, integrated approach to homelessness. And Dawn, I'm so excited to learn more about it. So, if you want to just kind of take us through what exactly it is you do and how your organization serves.
Thank you. My pleasure. So, CUCS, we believe in providing housing, healing, and hope to all vulnerable New Yorkers. And so, our definition of vulnerable is pretty broad. So, it could range between individuals who are currently or formerly unhoused. It could include individuals contending with severe mental illness, individuals contending with financial insecurity. It could also include individuals who have had substance use disorders. And so, for us, really, we try to meet people at that level of instability or vulnerability in order to provide a holistic approach to support them in stabilizing their lives. So, within our organization, we have what I like to kind of characterize as a few different businesses that really roll
Mhm.
up to the larger parent company. So, we do have supportive housing that we own and that we manage. So, we do have units of supportive housing that's permanent where if someone is housed with us, that is their home, they are leaseholders. And we also run and manage transitional supportive housing sites, meaning that we've engaged someone who potentially has been formerly homeless, and now we've been able to encourage them to come inside where we're helping to stabilize them. And usually our cycle time with finding placement for those individuals can range between 6 to 9 months. We also have a medical care unit. The name of it is Janian Medical Care, where they serve as our medical affiliate. So we provide primary care, psychiatric care, really where people are. So we have street psychiatry teams that engage with people that are currently unhoused. We provide primary care, psychiatric care to anyone who's in our transitional and supportive housing sites. And we also offer social work and case management. And so between our medical arm, our management of transitional and supportive housing sites, but also the social work and case management, we provide this integrated and holistic care model to really meet people where they are and to develop a care plan that's centered around their goals. And we do this intentionally because I think that when folks look at our clients, sometimes they don't see the humanity in them and they assume they've made every wrong decision that's placed them in this current circumstance. What they don't see is that there are a multitude of factors that contribute to where someone currently is today. And so our care model responds directly to that. So we offer a multitude of services in order to help vulnerable New Yorkers stabilize their lives.
Wow. Well, I know you didn't open the doors offering this comprehensive suite of services. I'm sure it's grown and evolved over the years. Help us understand a little bit about your clients and, New York being our largest city. I'm sure that there are tremendous numbers in New York that you serve. So help us kind of understand a little bit about your clients. And I'm assuming that trauma is kind of a consistent message that you hear from the people you serve.
Absolutely. Our clients really are everyday New Yorkers
Mm.
who happen to be in circumstances that have really left them in a place where they are viewed as being most vulnerable or not being on really stable footing. So we do serve across our service portfolio approximately 50,000 New Yorkers every year. So whether people are placed at our housing sites, whether we are meeting them on the streets, because we do have street outreach teams where we have individuals who go to the far corners of the city, they go into our subway system, they go under bridges to
Mhm,
encourage and engage unhoused individuals to come inside for safety, for food, to meet their basic needs and necessities. And like I mentioned before, we also have a street psychiatry team. And so right now, when you look at the demographics of our population, we have approximately 70% men who avail themselves of our services. But at our family sites, the overwhelming majority of our clients there are single mothers with families. And so we offer a breadth of trauma informed services in order to identify the goals and needs of that individual or family. Because in some cases, it could center around severe mental illness. In some cases, it could tie into food insecurity, needing additional access to educational resources, healthcare insecurity. So, really, when I talk about our clients, I do want to be reflective in letting really all New Yorkers know that they are our neighbors. And so they just happen to be contending with some circumstances that have left them in a place of vulnerability.
My pastor says the farther away you are from a problem, the easier the solution seems. And I think that really goes to homelessness. I think people that are not up close like you and your staff and your volunteers are, you see the humanity in people when you do get up close and you learn their name and you learn their story. But it's not good for people to go it alone, right? It's important that you connect. If that is a cause that resonates deeply within your heart and that breaks your heart, find an organization that is doing the work and find out how you can support them. I'm sure you have a breadth of volunteer opportunities
We
where you
do.
serve.
Your pastor is very wise. I love the statement that you just made because I do think it's easy for individuals to sometimes turn away, and not because there's any malintent. But I think that sometimes when you think about homelessness, you see it as this overwhelming, insurmountable challenge, especially now when we're seeing things reach crisis levels really across the nation, right? Like we see it in California, we see it here, like really like in these large cities where, you're just thinking like there's nothing that you can do. And I think one of the values of service is understanding that you do not need a big lofty title to suggest that you have any more power to serve your fellow human being. The gift in philanthropy and the gift in service is to know that wherever you are, there is a small but impactful change that you can make in someone else's lives, whether you meet them or not. So when you talk about volunteer opportunities, we, certainly, something as simple as serving a meal, right? Making that connection. As you said, learning someone's name, hearing their story. Those are things that we find invaluable in our work because when we talk to individuals who don't know how to be in service or don't know the best way to give, we say, I think that as human beings, there's a decision we make, right? Whether someone's housed or unhoused, they're still your neighbor, right? So then how do you serve your fellow human being? How do you become a part of humankind in a way that's impactful, sharing your gifts, your knowledge, in order to improve the current or future circumstance of someone in need. So whether it's serving a meal, we have individuals who oftentimes wonder, like with the winter, coming up, right? Something as simple as socks, something as simple as gloves, coats. These are things that many individuals, we're able to kind of just take that for granted in our everyday lives. But these types of materials are invaluable, especially if we're encountering people that we meet. Personal care items, those things are invaluable as someone is trying to like stabilize their lives for themselves or for their children. So yes, there are many ways in which people can give, great and small. And when individuals engage us, we provide, many options to them because we want them to know that there is no small impact that you can make. Every impact is significant.
And while you're in New York, there are nonprofits throughout the country serving our homeless brothers and sisters who have similar, they welcome volunteers, they welcome your engagement. So find somebody locally who's serving in this area because we all can relate to. It's appreciate what your organization has done so much, and especially the street team psychiatrist. I read that article about Dr. Joanna Freed. It's a street team approach. Sometimes it takes multiple times to connect, but that woman knows that somebody cares even though she didn't have a much of an interaction on that time, but that it is
Mhm.
so complex.
Absolutely. And I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about just the level of compassion that it
Mm.
requires, right? And one of the reasons why I'm just profoundly grateful to work, at CUCS and to work with my team, and to find joy in the work that they do is because every day they decide to exhibit compassion, to exhibit care, but also consistency. Because to your point, it may take 5 times for them to see the woman that Dr. Fried encountered that day in order for her to trust them enough to engage in conversation. Lots of our clients have been either criminalized or ostracized, marginalized, sometimes by family members, sometimes by other members of society. And so building trust for them is it's very difficult. And so what our team does is they put forward the fact that building trust and building relationship is so key to the success of our care model. So oftentimes it does require just the conversation, just checking in with them, seeing how they're doing that day, offering to grab them breakfast, offering them a pair of socks, or if they see that they may be injured, offering to provide that basic level of care in order to start the dialogue, in order to build the trust, the relationship, and ultimately get someone to come inside.
That's so good. So I read with interest what you all are calling safe havens as a form of transitional housing. Tell me more
Yes.
about that.
So our safe haven model is really centered around just our client-centered approach. So it's really deviating from the historical shelter definition, where it
Mhm.
was more of a dormitory type of model, where there were significant numbers of people there. For our safe haven model, we intentionally keep things fairly small, which allows us to implement a very targeted, flexible, client-centered approach and build a care model around their goals. So, which means that if we have an individual at one of our safe havens and their primary goal is to become gainfully employed. We have a career network where we provide job readiness skills, where we try to meet people at really the basic levels around how to develop a resume, how to go through an interview process, to talk about just some of the building blocks around remaining gainfully employed, whether that's time and attendance, full compliance with codes of conduct in a work environment, right? So it really just depends on where someone is. We also have other individuals where their primary goal may be, I really want to address my historical addiction head on. And so then we, pair them with services around, looking at some of the triggers that they've had historically that place them in a position where they believe that using of that substance is where they find their peace, right? And to help them find other healthy options in their lives and to have that counseling and that substance abuse support in order to help them turn the corner. So it really, in a safe haven model, since you don't have this dormitory style where you're planning on having a transient population, we start those building blocks from the time that they walk through those doors, right? Because we really want our cycle time around transitioning someone from a safe haven model to permanent housing
Mm.
to be within that 6 to 9 month mark. And that requires building the trust, building the relationship, offering consistent resources from day one.
Well, and even the terminology of that, safe haven, whoever came up with that, I mean, that's just so welcoming as opposed to shelter. It just, those words, I was like, "What is that?" And then I read more about it, and the way you explained it, it's just really a beautiful way to phrase that transitional housing. And then I also read where there's some cool development happening in New York City where some of the older hotels are being repurposed into affordable housing. So those are some of your partners that are working on that, I would assume. Tell us a little bit more about what's happening with that because that sounds really amazing and inspiring.
Yes. So in this particular mayoral administration, certainly one of the goals and primary focuses has been around creating more affordable housing here in New York City. And when you look at the real estate portfolio in New York City, the vacancy rate is so small. So, which means that through a host of programs, I don't know if you're aware that this particular mayor, under his leadership, had mentioned a project called the City of Yes, where it talks about
Mhm.
building a little bit everywhere. So really looking at better land utilization, looking at how you then rehab underutilized properties, rebuilding underutilized properties, utilizing spaces like, let's say, parking lots where historically there's not been proper zoning around building affordable housing, is really taking a look at really every opportunity to create a larger portfolio of housing that is affordable here. So, what you mentioned around just the rehab of certain hotels where maybe they're underutilized and converting them to affordable housing is really extension of some of those larger efforts. And CUCS is a partner to city agencies that are really at the forefront of developing housing throughout the city. Additionally, we do partner also with private developers. There's some private developers that have either purchased land or purchased rights to build in certain parts of New York City. And so part of our job is also to be a good nonprofit partner to those developers and also to really throw our hat in the ring to be the social services provider in that supportive housing. Because really just providing a home is just the tip of the iceberg. It's an important tip of the iceberg, but we have certainly seen the benefits of offering a more holistic approach to keeping people stably housed.
That's very encouraging news because I know real estate, rents in New York, I just don't know how working families can make it. And then if you're homeless, how you even begin to bridge that gap to get off the streets. Challenge you and your team have. So I read somewhere where you said outreach efforts can take sometimes years to pay off. I know you've had some amazing stories of impact and restoration for some of your clients. I would love to hear a few of those, Dawn.
As I mentioned, consistency is really key to the work that we do. And I think when you decide to be compassionate and empathetic and really see things from our clients' point of view, when systems have failed them, people have failed them, they have been part of groups that have fallen through the cracks in terms of social services, it's really hard to build up that trust. So definitely it can oftentimes take years. There are two stories that for me are top of mind because we recently celebrated the stories of two of our clients in a recent fundraiser for the organization because we definitely feel that I can talk about the work all the time and say how amazing CCS is and the staff there, they are amazing, but I do think that it's far more impactful when you hear from the clients we serve. And
Sure.
so we featured a mom of four children who had been separated from her children for many years. And now, through having stable housing, where she's been with us over the last, I believe, 5 to 6 years, she's now had a chance to unify with her children. And so, through that, I believe that her children range between the ages of, I think, 16 to 10. And so, can you imagine being separated from your children for years and now unifying with them in a home you can call your own? And so, hearing her talk about connecting her children to educational resources, um, because we were able to identify that one of her children was on the spectrum, and we were able to help connect her child to the proper resources at the local school and advocating for her and her family. And to see that all four children are now thriving educationally, but she has a place that she calls home. She's also someone who has a mobility device. So mobility for her is a challenge. So being able to help with unifying her family, knowing that every night she has the opportunity to help them with homework at their kitchen
Mhm.
table and that they don't have to worry about where they're going to sleep next month. It's not only heartening, but it really shows that a holistic approach works. Another story with a woman who had formerly lived in a shelter. She's been with us for the last 7 years. And when she talked about entering her apartment, having keys, and when she said that when she walked in, she kissed the floor of her apartment. And, it was all that we could do to hold it together. She told her story. But having met her, I know that that's real for her. Having a home to call her own where she can serve dinners to family members, have visitors, having the privacy that she deserves as she's using a restroom. It's just to see that that's placed her in a certain place in her life where now she's focusing on her health. She's had chronic health issues and having medical staff on site or individuals who will go with her to a doctor's visit, helping her best advocate for herself and to talk through the complexity of her chronic illnesses where she's not felt comfortable in doing that before. Those two stories are too many that we've had the privilege and honor of walking alongside our clients and helping them achieve a life that we want for our own families. So, I could talk about our clients, all day, but just wanted to share with you how, just a small decision that one makes to serve and to hear someone's story, how then that builds the trust, builds up space for us to advocate on their behalf. It builds up space within them to trust someone outside of themselves. So all of that just really helps us to take so much pride in the work that we do. And it also helps us to double down on the need to do more.
Exactly. I don't know who said it, but I've heard it said that your story is not yours. Like the story those kids are going to tell, of the hand up that they were giving, of the love they received, of the support, its ripple effect. It goes on, and that's how service works. Love is so much of it because a lot of times those people just haven't felt they felt unloved. So I think what you and your team are doing, love is a big part of it. And that's, for me, the broader definition of philanthropy means love of humanity. It is, yes, money is an important part of it. I'm sure your yearly budget is quite high to be able to run all these programs, but I would say I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think love is probably the most important part because you can't function at that level without loving, your brothers and sisters in need. It cannot be transactional. That type of service requires a loving heart and love given every day.
And you're absolutely right, because while I share the success stories, there are many stories I'm not sharing that are very difficult.
Mhm.
Our staff, on a daily basis have to deal with, maybe someone who's not followed the service plan, right? Someone being triggered by something that has happened even prior to them coming inside into one of our transitional or supportive housing sites. You may have situations where our clients may not want to take their medication if they are on
Right.
medication and then having a negative reaction or us having a negative outcome as a result. So our staff deal with the most challenging of circumstances. And I believe that what keeps them going each and every day is the love of serving someone beyond you, the love of understanding that we can all make impact in our own way, love for humanity, love for, someone having housing and healing because we believe that those are human rights that we all deserve. So you're absolutely right. Like, yes, there's a significant amount of funding that it takes to do this work. But when we look at even that funding, that pales in comparison to the cost of incarceration, where sometimes we find our clients. Like the cost of incarceration is
Yeah.
ridiculously expensive. And oftentimes, incarceration is unnecessary if you're really getting to the heart and the need of the problem. Emergency hospital stays,
Mm.
like that, those numbers are astronomical, right? And so while our budget can be viewed as high just on paper, when you actually dissect like the cost of our
Alternatives.
care model, right, and the
Mhm.
alternatives, right, it's far less expensive than alternatives that we're seeing. But it is the love. Right. And I think that we talked about that a little earlier before jumping into the call, where I think that, I limited myself when I thought about philanthropy. And I said, because I'm not wealthy, but I do give up my time, I give up my knowledge. And then when I took the time to just look at the
Mhm.
definition, it really does center around promoting the welfare of someone else and your love of humanity. And so if I'm speaking from a personal place, that's what's kept me in service, whether I was in government or whether now in the nonprofit world, is because I believe in people. And I know that I benefited from the generosity of people that I've never met. Whether I was in the public school system and there was an after school program that was funded by someone, or if there was someone who came in to provide tutoring services, or someone who potentially spoke my name in a room as I was advancing in government, who talked about just the quality of the work that I produced. I've absolutely benefited from the generosity of people. And who am I to think that I'm too busy not to serve when I've benefited from service? So, certainly for me, love is at the core of that.
Well, and Uncommon Philanthropist, it is giving, but it's serving and it's love. And within that, there's volunteering, there's mentoring. And I think if you work for a nonprofit or you work for the government and you're in any type of service role, you are in the bullseye of being a philanthropist because you are giving yourself away each and every day. So I think it's a very high calling, and I hope more people will embrace being, yeah, I'm a philanthropist. I serve. They can't even say the word. It's like,
Right.
you
It's
are,
a
you
mouthful.
are. You are a philanthropist. I had a chance to present to some high school students just on Friday about philanthropy, and they were in the health services sector, and I just had a chance to say, it's important that you get a good education and that you're smart, but where you're really gonna make a difference is when you love on your patients. And they were like, "Wow." They're getting that kind of instruction in school, but it's
Right.
true. Don't forget philanthropy for your whole life. And the thing about it is, Don, you can speak to this about how it's so cup filling and it gives your life such purpose when you wake up every day knowing we've got work to do.
You're
So tell me
absolutely
about
right.
how your cup gets filled every day. I know it's hard and I'm sure you carry the weight of the world
Mhm.
on your shoulders sometimes, but I have a feeling your gets filled a lot with the type of work you do and the people you get to work with.
So I have the awesome privilege to work alongside some of the most committed people I've ever met. The team that I have at CUCS, whether they're case managers, social workers, nurse practitioners, psychiatrists, primary care physicians, even folks in our admin team, it's like they're a group of people that always actively decide to go towards the issue, go towards the person in need,
Mhm.
right? So where many people may choose to look away for a variety of reasons, it just never enters their mind. And so to see the level of service that they deliver each and every day, even with cases that most would find to be most challenging, it's that absolutely fills my cup, and it makes clear to me that whatever resources they need, it is my job as the leader of the organization to have what they need so that they are best serving our clients. I tell them all the time that they are my first and most important client because um, if I take care of them in the ways that they need, really understanding how to create a better workplace for them, how to create a better employee experience for them, I truly believe that they're able to deliver the best service to our clients who are everyday New Yorkers, and to meet them where they are to provide the best service and delivery imaginable. But also the other
Good.
aspects of my work that just fill my cup is when I see that we are able to take an idea
Mm.
to implementation. So, the nature of our work has evolved, right? We are seeing more folks who are homeless and more folks, especially after the pandemic, contending with undiagnosed mental illness.
Yeah.
And so, in addition to being service providers, my team are innovators. We were the
Mhm.
first to launch like mobile medicine and street psychiatry here in New York City. But even more than that, they're always trying to think about where have we missed the mark? Like, where is there a gap in our services that needs to be filled? So, one of the exciting things that we're doing now in partnership with the state is that we're providing psychiatry to adolescents. I think that for a long time, we were focusing primarily on the heads of households, individuals, but right now we're also focusing on, adolescents, how to help our young people really contend with navigating a life, right?
Mhm.
There's so many pressures, between social media and
No,
all those things that are placed on our
yeah.
adolescents, that they're being forced to grow up a lot faster than what we have. And so we really want to help them navigate a life and to put their mental health um, at the forefront of their overall well-being. So definitely working with these talented, committed professionals with an eye towards learning and continuous improvement, my cup runneth over. I
Mm.
mean, I just, I'm really, really privileged to work with them.
And then that brings another level of energy when you foster that innovation and people's ideas are heard. And it's not just the person at the top who's delivering, we're going to do this, this, and this. It's like bottom up. That's where you create that culture that people just crave a work environment like that. And I think so many businesses miss the mark because they're too focused on the numbers. They're missing that people part, and I think it sounds like you as a leader, you've really grasped that. One of the things I heard you say, you talked about connection as philanthropy, connection as philanthropy, and I hadn't connected those dots, Don. What exactly do you mean by that?
So, when I talk about connection, is if you decide to serve, but you're not making appropriate connection with the individual or with the system that either requires a revamp or change or additional support, then your outcomes will be minimized. I think that really the human connection, first and foremost, but also making connection with the issue at hand is extremely important. For me, philanthropy is also tied to just what I've lived personally. And I'll just use just some of my lived experience to highlight this example. So most folks don't know this about me, but I guess they will, after this. And I say this with pride. My father, who is long gone, I certainly think that, his spirit has really kind of pushed me towards leading CUCS because the services that we offered would have been of immense help to my father. His sister, my Aunt Leslie, had contended and struggled with substance use for many years of her life, had sometimes been estranged from the family, where she was not stably housed. And my father, had to try to work through many systems in order to try to find the
Mm,
integrated and holistic approach that now my team delivers. Um, when he took me to school one day, I remember this as clear as day, and I was about 8 years old. That was where I met my Aunt Leslie. Like, I knew that my father had a sister, but he was taking me to school, and we happened to pass someone who was sleeping on one of the seats on the subway, and I saw my father do a double take, and I heard him say, "Leslie," and I didn't realize in that moment I was meeting my auntie. Like my father had mentioned having a sister, but it mentioned, that it wasn't the right time for us to meet her. And seeing how my father stopped in his tracks, saw the humanity in his sister that he had not seen for years, and directing his daughter to extend her hand to shake her auntie's hand, regardless of what anyone else thought about her on the train, because that was his sister. And he wanted me to ensure that I respected her, regardless of her circumstance. And then seeing him get her off the train at the next stop as he was taking me to school and proceeding to use a payphone. So I know I'm dating myself there with payphones, calling to try to find a place that offered her recovery services, right? And at that time, most places really focused just on one thing, right? They either focused on the substance use, they focused on getting you housed, they focused on, maybe job attainment and workforce development. But now I'm afforded this awesome privilege to lead a group of individuals who understand that a holistic approach is where you get a positive outcome. So, in thinking about making the connection, connecting with the person, connecting with the issue, connecting with the heart is what really I think lies at the center of being philanthropic.
mm. Aunt Leslie, God love her. You know, addiction, I've worked in the field of addiction, and I know that. relapse for so many people. It's the hardest thing to break through, and I know that's disheartening for workers and for family members who see their loved ones relapse again and again. It is just the insidious nature of addiction, but people can break through, and you can't give up on them. Can't give
Absolutely.
up on them. Oh,
And
did she ever find healing and peace and restoration? Do you
s
know?
so thankfully she did. Unfortunately, she has also, passed, but
Mm,
the joy that I have is that my father actually had the opportunity to see his sister healed, and to know that he had a small impact in making that happen. Like my father was very, very selfless, and he fully understood that the work that my Aunt Leslie had to engage in order to be in a healed place. But for him to have had that before she passed away, to see her no longer using, to see her in an apartment of her own, to see her unify with her children, I'm really thankful that my father and my Aunt Leslie had that with each other.
mm. I thank you for sharing that story. That just hard but beautiful.
Isn't life that way though?
Mhm.
Hard but beautiful. When I think about, just the joy I have each and every day waking up, I say thank you every day that I wake up because I realize every day is such a gift. But I think you framed it beautifully. Hard but beautiful.
So I love how your organization works with governments, how you've found a way to be collaborative. So many nonprofits, government just, everybody exists in their own silos. And what advice do you have? How have you been able to kind of build those bridges for more collaboration within those organizations? Can you give us any insight into how we can better do that?
Absolutely. This is also an area where I feel like I've been really, really fortunate. Having worked in government before coming into the nonprofit sector, I kind of understand how government works and what that landscape looks like. Also, CUCS, prior to my joining the team, had already been in partnership with government, which has really served us well. Where we've worked with the Department of Homeless Services, Department of Mental Health and Hygiene, Housing Preservation and Development. So they are our partners. I think that when offering advice to nonprofits who are trying to find their way in working with government, I think that certainly understanding that navigation of government is a skill, right? So really give yourself the time and grace to understand that, but also seeing yourself as an extension of the work oftentimes that government can't do. So one of the beauties about the work that we offer is like while the city of New York, absolutely, they have shelters, you know what I mean, that they own and operate. They have folks who serve in health related and clinical types of titles. There is an understanding, here in New York City that oftentimes nonprofits have the flexibility to meet clients in a way that government just was not designed to. Like generally government is they're thinking about like these really big, broad projects, utilizing taxpayer dollars to have the greatest impact. So what happens is that they may not be able to develop client-centered approaches or individualized care plans for people. They just don't have the bandwidth. So, in talking to partner nonprofits, I always talk about think about what you offer that government doesn't and really let that like be the driving force in your conversation with government, right? And to figure out if there are opportunities to partner with government to either receive contract funding in order to roll out programs that government can't, right? To fill those gaps that you're
Mhm.
seeing as a resident of that particular city. And so I think that when you see yourself as not replicating government, but really be an extension of what government potentially can't offer its
Mm.
citizens, then that partnership, I think, becomes richer from the onset. But it also allows you to stand on your own with what you're bringing to the table to serve people in need.
And Don, that goes back to your connection as philanthropy. So those strategic connections are so important as we go throughout our life. And I always encourage people, if you know somebody who like needs to know Dawn, make the intro, make the connection. If you know somebody, just you never know where that's going to land. So I love connection as a form of philanthropy. And, it's like getting into big business or big companies or even big nonprofits. It helps to know somebody in order to begin to build that bridge and have those conversations. When I did that presentation, I did all kinds of research for the high school, and I came across a gentleman, a French guy named Alexis de Tocqueville. And 200 years ago, he came to study the US, and he was from France, came to study the US, and he wrote about, like, the nonprofit sector and just the spirit of volunteerism and how it complements government. I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like government is not meant to function in that role. You need these nonprofits that can be small and nimble and
Yes.
focused on different areas. It just can't be big and broad because it's so individualized. So I love the fact that you kinda helped people understand, people look to the government to solve all kinds of problems, and sometimes it's like the government just can't do it. They're too big and unwieldy. We don't want them
Yes.
focused that minutely in some of these problems that really are best served through nonprofits and the leaders there. So, in our pre-show questionnaire, I ask what brings you joy. I've written a book about joy based on my mom's life, and I think we're not talking about joy enough. Don, I would love to know what brings you joy.
So, what brings me joy professionally, certainly being in service driven, people centered work brings me joy because for as long as I have on this earth, I really want to serve well. And I understand that in my small part of the world, you know, treating people well, serving well, seeing the humanity in people um, allows there to be a ripple effect in the world. And so, certainly, service oriented, people centric work brings me joy. Personally, what brings me joy, and especially after the pandemic, my family, it was so nice to have it reaffirmed that I actually like my family, and some
Yeah.
people don't have that. Like my family really is my foundation. They keep me grounded. Any ways in which I've tried to improve myself personally or professionally, they've always been there to support me. I'm also proudly a part of, I guess, what they're calling now the sandwich generation, where they talk about with a multi-generational household. I have a feisty 79-year-old mother. I have a 16-year-old daughter that I'm raising. So having those multi-generational conversations, I think, are enriching, but they also keep me focused on what's important. And I think that having that as my foundation allows me to serve better, and it allows me to really set a standard around what I believe service should look like for every human being. So certainly my family, like just immense joy that I get from my family.
And you mentioned your team too, that they bring you great joy each and every day in the work that
Yes.
they do. That's
Yes,
beautiful.
they're fabulous. Like surround yourself with smart, dedicated people and you can't go wrong. And certainly, I was very blessed working in government, working in great teams, and having that also show up at CUCS has been wonderful. And the fact that they are actually closer to the client, um, dealing with the ups and downs of our clients, and just to see how they continue to exhibit such compassion and care and that they're consistent in that approach, that absolutely is joyful as well.
Well, I've enjoyed our time together so much. So I close out these
So have
conversations giving my guest a chance to. So the tagline of Uncommon Philanthropist is let go, not let's go, it's let go. So I would love you to close us out, Dawn, with a rousing let go. What does let go mean in your line of work in serving our homeless neighbors?
Thank you. So for me, letting go is really letting go of the bias, the myths, and the misconceptions that you have about people in need. Um, We are all the products of a host of circumstances and situations and interactions with people. Because there's really no human interaction that's wasted, good or bad. There are things that you will learn, things that you will unlearn. And so, in letting go, I ask people, I implore people to let go of those negative images that you have around the unhoused, or people contending with mental illness, or people who have issues with financial insecurity, because they have a story in the way that we do. And when you allow yourself to let go, you see them. You see their worth, you see their dignity, you see their humanity, and then you will feel compelled to serve.
Perfect. So tell us how people can get in touch with you or to learn more about your outstanding organization.
So our address is www.cucs.org. On our website, you will learn about just a broad section of services that we offer. Because one of the things that we didn't talk about during this call as much is the fact that we're also a training provider. So every
Mhm.
year we train behavioral health professionals, medical professionals, folks in law enforcement, folks in the legal sector on our model, because we do believe that that's the way to improve the standard of care for vulnerable New Yorkers, but also vulnerable individuals across the nation. So every year we train about 15,000 people. So if folks are interested in learning about de-escalation techniques, crisis intervention, how to work with communities that have been justice involved, we have a really robust portfolio of coursework there, because we do want to share what we know. We also have what we call the CUCS report, that if you subscribe by going to our website on a monthly basis, you can get our report. And what we do is we highlight just our experience as practitioners. We highlight programs, we highlight people, all with the goal of just educating people about our work and encouraging them to join us, either directly or either in their communities, to serve vulnerable communities.
So the trainings you provide, are those in-person trainings or are they online?
Both. We have some courses that we provide virtually, um, and we customize courses as well. But if folks want to have that in person experience, we've traveled as well. We've recently returned back from UCLA. And so, certainly, if in person, if that's the experience that a client wants, we're happy to provide that as well.
Well, locally, I work with a team with our local fire department, and they have a paramedicine program, which I'm sure you know about that. And they are
Mm.
they are the ones to really interface with our homeless neighbors in need. And I know David would enjoy learning more about what you guys are doing at CUCS. So Dawn, what a privilege to be able to talk to you. Keep up the great work and serving our neighbors in need in New York. I can't imagine what your day looks like, and I thank you so much for enlightening us in so many ways. So just stay strong
Thank
and
you so much, Rena.
keep shining.